Spoilers ahead, for this entire video I'll be discussing the whole of John Wick 4 for the most part, and yeah, just so that you're aware of that. So I went to see John Wick on Saturday, and I have to say it is definitely a cinematic masterpiece. I think the best way of describing this film is that every single shot was done beautifully. Going into the film, I was excited to see what we were going to be getting, and after seeing some bits talking about how this was the final film, I didn't actually want to believe it. However, it was a great send-off for the character and the world that we've been experiencing over the last 4 entries. They take you to so many different places, one of them being the coolest one that we went to in my opinion, which was Osaka in Japan. This entire part of the movie was quite possibly one of the best fight scenes that we've ever had in the entire franchise, and it was laid out in a phenomenal manner. One scene from this movie that was just a badass moment was when this guy, whose name I shall withdraw from trying to pronounce, tells the people who look like his kitchen staff that guests have arrived, which ends up resulting in them preparing for war, and this scene was just done amazingly well. His character, and Akira, who is played by Rina, whose surname again I will not try to pronounce, who is also a singer. I didn't actually realise this until I looked at the casting list, and then I realised, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that name before, and I checked my Spotify, and it's because I've heard like 2 of her songs ages ago. But yeah, they're both great additions to this universe, and her character, by the looks of it, might eventually get her own spin-off, which would be very interesting. I do think her character, though, was a great addition as a kind of like a female badass character that didn't bring down the main character, as this is something that we see a lot currently with a lot of films, but it never is something that kind of affects the John Wick films. I feel like they're always good at giving, you know, the main character his due the entire way through, and also adding in the characters who are meant to be kind of showing off the other groups, so the female characters, the black characters, the other ethnicities, that sort of thing, all of them having their own moment to shine in a way that isn't just dulling down the main character. I think one thing that every single person will agree on when it comes to this film is how absurdly amazing every single shot is. From the lighting, angle selection, the weather, the choreography, all of it is all done to an amazing extent within this film. A great example of this is the moment that John is going after and trying to kill the guy called Killer, who's also a martial art guy I saw, and he's like massively ripped, but his character is massive. It's another great work of just prosthetics and so on. But yeah, he's going to kill this guy to try and get back into his family so that they can then do the actual end duel. However, this entire moment of them fighting within the club, the people dancing and somehow nobody caring that people are dying around them, which, you know, we'll just forget that ever happened. The way the water's interacting with the lighting and the action, everything just works well together and is just done brilliantly. But what I think I'm going to talk about is the 2 main things that are a little bit different to this franchise within this film. The speed of the film is one that is definitely changed up a little bit. It starts off a lot slower paced, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, except for this one woman who was in the theatre with us who just kept sighing and complaining the entire time throughout the beginning moments, to the point where she was just complaining of how like boring the film is. And I in my mind I was like, you're literally just like in the first 10-20 minutes, you're complaining that they're trying to set up who the villain is. Like, come on, just give it a moment. However, overall, I'd say that the actual heavy amount and more dialogue at this beginning moment was to serve the purpose of giving us an actual end experience that wasn't all action heavy, as let's say you get within the first 3 films. However, was trying to push this forward of this idea of, you know, actually this grandiose moment of ending off the franchise. One thing that I really want to talk about though is the end villain fight, and I do think the villain within this film was done decently well, and overall he wasn't a bad choice to have. However, personally I would have rather had an actual fight one-on-one with him instead of what we got. Mainly just because I think it would have been a little bit more satisfying of a death, but the main upside towards doing the method that they chose to do within this moment was to try and make it more meaningful towards John's death as a character. Yes, we might not have had the extreme bloodbath, however this is something that we've had in all the prior films, and this entire film for the most part you're still getting that massive action-packed sequences that is just absolutely satisfying to watch. So it was definitely a change of pace that I think some will consider a bad move, but I'd argue the case that for the most part it works out well just because of the send-off for the character. The film has a different shift of tone in comparison to the first 3 that are all action heavy, kind of pushing up, and then this film is definitely the outlier in terms of the way it's structured and also just the impact it's trying to have. And the last thing that I do want to discuss is the character of Tracker, or Nobody, whichever one that you want to call him. I personally don't really see the point in his character existing within this film. If you plucked him out of this film, he would literally change nothing to the narrative of this film. So I think he's an interesting person to throw in, maybe. Sure, you could argue that case. However, for the most part, I think that his main point of being there is really just to have like a reason for John to kind of like recollect on his dog, maybe. I don't know. You've got other ideas, you know, that you could throw in there as to why he exists. However, overall, I don't think that they took advantage of trying to create him as a character. They just kind of chose to shove him in there without much reasoning. It just kind of felt like he was pushed in, and they didn't just want to expand his character, so he just comes off as a little bit more screen time than the average random gang or bounty hunter that we've seen within this film. Hopefully though, whatever is next for this universe, as I do believe that they will do more related to this, even if it's not another John Wick film, purely because I think there is a lot of speculation whether or not he is actually dead. I think they've left it open, where yes, he's got his gravestone and everything like that, however, you never see him get buried. It's a typical thing within films. If you don't see them get buried, they're probably not guaranteed to be dead. If they chose they wanted to bring him back, they could, and it's not something that's off the table really. I think Keanu Reeves would be down to do whatever in the future anyway, and it doesn't really matter. Yes, he might be getting a bit older now, but he's still been able to do all of this since, so I can't really see too much changing. But like I said earlier, with people like Akira, I do think that we're going to see more actual characters like her, and then also maybe someone like Tracker have their own extended period of time on either, let's say, the big screen or small screen, or even in something, let's say, like a comic. Any of that to try and expand the universe of John Wick, I think would be good. However, again, I do think that they kind of missed in some regards, mainly with the character of Nobody. I think he was just kind of secondary thought for the most part, and he didn't really serve too much purpose. However, that is my overall thoughts right now as to what I saw in John Wick. I would go a bit more into detail of a lot more stuff, however, I didn't want to go too spoiler heavy in this and go over literally everything. And currently as well, I can't really show you absolutely everything because, you know, the film isn't actually out. Not many clips are surfacing right now, so I can't really show you much. But yeah, hopefully this was at least somewhat of a interesting video. If you are interested in seeing the film, or if you have seen the film, let me know down below what your thoughts were of the film. I do think it was decent. I do think it's probably a good film. However, I think John Wick 3 is still better than this film. Anyway, with that all being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.